Okay, so 2000 Montana, we're going to replace the ball joint on this guy. First thing I'm going to do is take the brake calipers out of the way. Pretty simple. Just go in here, I'm going to set my socket on that bolt there, and I'm going to take the other one off. Back in a sec. Okay, so I've removed the two bolts that just look like that. Now I'm going to take off that caliper and disc. Okay, caliper and disc are moved out of the way, and they've been wired securely to the coil spring there just to keep them out of the way. Now we can start working on this ball joint. I have to loosen this nut in here. Right here, lighting's kind of bad, but right here, gotta loosen that guy there. I'm gonna do that now. Okay, nut has been loosened, but not removed. I've taken the cotter pin out, loosened it up, and now we're going to separate the control arm from the steering component here to get that stud loose. So we've loosened that nut. We gave this right here a nice couple of sharp wraps with the hammer, and that loosened up the stud, and now you can see, get my bar in there, that is nice and free now. So I can begin to remove these three rivets in here. So I'm opting to grind the heads off the undersurface using a hand grinder. You can drill the heads out. I just don't have my vehicle high enough off the ground to do that, so I'm just going to use the hand grinder and carefully buzz off the heads of those rivets underneath there, three rivets. Okay, I'm about to use my hand grinder here now to grind out the underside of those three bolts. So, as you can see, I've popped off or ground off the heads of those three rivets on the control arm. So you can just see now where the first one here closest to me is starting to want to drift back out the top, as it should do. So there's three heads there. I've given this general area a good wrap with the hammer just to loosen everything up, because those rivets have been in there for a while. They're kind of rusted in place. So you give it a grind the heads off, give this area here a good whack with the hammer just to loosen stuff up, and those rivets should pop right out now. So I'll take those out now. I'll be back in a sec. Plan B, those rivets did not want to come out, or at least I wasn't able to get them out. I've been trying now for about an hour. So I've resorted to plan B. I've taken out the control bar linkage bolts here and there, and I've taken out the stabilizer bar linkage bolt that runs through, here. And now the ball joint has come off of the steering thing. So I'm just going to take this control arm down now, and now that it's out, I can work on these properly. We'll get a little bit of leverage and pop them out of there, because they just were not interested in moving at all. So, see that thing in a bad way. Anyway, we'll fix this up. I'll get back to you in a couple of minutes. So, we have drilled pilot holes here into those rivets, three rivets, using the drill. And I've drilled on the underside too, on the heads of the underside. Try and give me a little bit of an edge there. I'm hoping now with a good whack of that punch and the trusty old hammer here, we'll knock those three rivets out. I'll get right back to you. So those bolts did not want to hammer out, sorry to say. So what I did is I upped the drill size to 7/16 and just opened them up just to the point where they're contacting that ball joint unit on both sides. I did it here on both sides. You can see. Open it up with the 7/16. Now, what I did is just took the hammer and gave myself a nice solid whack here. And you can see that guy's gonna come right out of there. So for some reason, these guys did not want to play here. I'll get that up a little bit. Those rivets were here. They just did not want to come out of that ball joint. Rusted in there pretty solid. So anyway, we'll get her out. I'll get the new one back in. I'll be back in a couple of minutes. So bad ball joint out. And we're just going to tidy up those holes, fit the new one in there. I'll be back in a minute. So here we are, control arm and new ball joint with grease nipple, some bolts, and lock nuts that came with the kit. So that essentially just kind of slips in there. You can see there. And we're just going to put those bolts in. Tighten her up, and I'll be back. Okay, new ball joint bolted into place. Torque down those lock nuts. We're good to go. Gonna put her in. I'll be back. Okay, control arm reinstalled. I haven't snugged up these bolts here and here yet because the book says that I have to simulate a load on this before I tighten up those bolts through the bushing. So I just put them in place, tightened them, but not snugged up yet, and just shot a quick coat of primer on that because the grinding that I did there looks a little ugly, but keep the weather off. So new ball joint in place. I'm just going to put the new nut on that stud there. You can see that. And we'll give her a tighten up there. So get a better view in there. So control arm in place. Put on that bolt here. Throw that on the top of the ball stud. And I've got a cotter pin there that I gotta throw in there as well. Anyway, I'll get right back to you. So, you can see we put the new nut on there, and I've put in a cotter pin there. Split the cotter pin, so now we're ready to put the brake caliper and all that fun stuff back on. Just so you know, my stabilizer bar linkage, which I took out in order to remove the stabilizer bar, was pretty rusted. So I went to the local auto parts store and picked up a new one for about $7-8 with the tack. So I'm going to put that in as well. I'll show you a shot of that when that's reassembled. Okay, so reinstalled stabilizer link, brand new one, easy peasy to put in. So that's on. Now, I'm just gonna get the brake calipers back down and throw them back on the spindle here. And I'll be back in a minute, let you know what's going on. So, brake caliper is back on. Very simple to do. And now I'm going to simulate the load so that I can tighten up this bolt here and this guy right here. This one right here. I've got to tighten these up, but it says don't tighten them until we've simulated a load. So that's fine. I'll do that right now. Get back to you in a minute. I'm just going to use the jack there. Lift up this control arm. Should be pretty straightforward. Back to you in a sec. Okay, stabilizer bolts retorqued down, that was successful. Stabilizer bar linkage in place. Calipers repositioned. ABS sensor cable plumbed back in. And the lighting really sucks, but get a better shot. What's shaking in there? You can see all of that stuff. Putting back in position. So we're ready to throw the wheel on and give it a shot. By far, the worst part of this job was taking out those 3 rusted rivets. Otherwise, this job would have taken about an hour and a half. Turned into a 3-hour ordeal. Anyway, I'll be back to you in a minute. I'm gonna go for a test drive. Well, took the beast for a drive, and it drives like a Cadillac. So this thing will last for another 10 or 20 years. So I'll be able to pass it on to my son when he grows up. So that'll be good. Easy peasy.